there. We had some requests from a number of people for video blogs, and I thought, well, I'll throw one together here, partly because if I type everything out that I'm about to say, no one would read to the end, and I'm 100% confident of that. So I just want to give you a brief devotional, but I want to use it as a video, and so it's a way for you to just follow along. And this is from Psalm 30. Psalm 30, it's a psalm of David at the dedication of the house. He's dedicating God's house, and he wrote this psalm as a song to be sung. And we're just going to look at verses 6 through 10, and I want to show you what's going on in his heart. David here is extolling God. He's praising God for his care, that God has delivered him and taken care of him. And what's interesting, if you look at verse 6, David says this. He says, "Now as for me, I said in my prosperity, I will never be moved." He says, at the moment of my prosperity, when things were going well for me, I thought to myself, I'll never be moved. I'm good. I'm in a good place. David's really sort of taking pride in his own abilities. When everything's going well, he's confident that he will not be shaken from that position of stability and trust in God. And we all get there, right? I mean, we're in a season right now where we've just come off of a period of just unbelievable prosperity. Our country's had the longest bull run in the stock market ever. For most of us, that's been a hugely prosperous time of life. And David here in this psalm is saying, there is a time in my prosperity where I said, I will never be moved. Nothing is going to shake my confidence in God. But he was saying that not necessarily based on God, but based on his own trust of God. He was trusting in himself at that moment and not in God who is over him. And that's exactly what he says in verse 7. Look what he says. He says, "O Lord, by your favor you have made my mountain to stand strong." In other words, that he acknowledges that it was only God who was actually providing those blessings. God was the only one who was providing those moments of fortune and prosperity, that God had given those things. At the end of verse 7, he says, "You hid your face, and I was dismayed." In that moment when God sort of turns from him, when God takes away the prosperity that he had been pouring out on him, when he removes the blessings for a moment, David says, "I was dismayed." One verse before, he says, "I'll never be moved. I'm going to be just fine." And then the next verse, he says, "I was absolutely dismayed when those things were taken away from me." And in verse 8, he says, "To you, O Lord, I called, and to the Lord I made supplication. What profit is there in my blood if I go down to the pit? What will the dust praise you? Will it declare your faithfulness?" In other words, if I die, who's going to get the blessing of that? I won't be able to bring you honor and glory. And so he sort of is making this appeal to God, saying, "God, restore the prosperity to me. If I die, no one's going to get praise. So save my life. Keep me in that place of prosperity. Protect me. Give me the things that I want, and then I'll go back to praising you." But that's not okay. And what David is expressing here in this psalm, he's telling us that in those moments when God removes prosperity from us, when he takes away comfort and he replaces it with hardship, how our hearts respond to that evidences where we're really at with God. It's easy to say, God is blessing me, God is caring for me, things are good in moments of prosperity. But when times are tough, when it's hard to get the things that we need, when jobs are gone, when the economy is crashing around us, what do we do at that moment? And David says he understands what that feels like. He understands the struggle that is. And so he comes to God now in verse 10 and he says, "Hear, O Lord, and be gracious to me. O Lord, be my helper." Now, instead of coming to God and demanding a restoration of that prosperity, what does David do? He comes to God and he says, "God, you're the one who needs to help me. I need you. I need your presence again. Not prosperity, not all those other things, but God, I need you to come to me and help me." And that's exactly what he does in verse 10 and verse 11. Look what he says. "You have turned my mourning into dancing. You've loosed my sackcloth and girded me with gladness. Then my soul may sing praise to you and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to you forever." Now, how does he go from being sad, covered in sackcloth, mourning, to being rejoicing and dancing? What happens? Well, the answer is the prayer that he makes in verse 10. He knows that God's answer to him is yes. "Hear, O Lord, be gracious to me. O Lord, be my helper." He knows that God is his helper. He knows that God is gracious to him. He knows that he has received God's care and God's blessing over him, over his life. In a season like this, when we find ourselves in struggle, when we find ourselves in physical and emotional turmoil, where do we turn? The answer is we turn to God. Just like David did in those moments of prosperity when we think we're going to be okay, when we think we'll never be moved. God removes those things from us so that we realize our need for him, so that we come to him and we say, God, I need you to care for me. I need you in my life at this moment. I need you to be my helper. I need you, God. Not all the things that the world can offer me. I need you. David understood that. And that's what God's doing in these seasons when life becomes difficult. He strips everything away from us so that our only hope can be found in Christ. And when we come to Christ and we say, God, help me. Jesus, help me. I need your help. I need you to be my helper. I need you to help me and restore the joy of my soul. What's his answer? His answer is yes. He replaces sackcloth with dancing. He replaces mourning with joy. Why? Because Jesus is good. He's better. In fact, Jesus is the best, isn't he? And if we have him, we have everything. So I hope your hearts are encouraged and that this little psalm of David's own struggle will bring you joy and peace and comfort this day.